hills of Los Angeles, I'm and most high for the night. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on Monday, July 7th. The LA Galaxy 3-0 winners over the Vancouver Whitecaps. Another win. That's 2 wins in a row at home. If you're paying attention, it's also just 2 wins overall this entire season. The LA Galaxy getting the best of Vancouver. We're going to talk about the gameplay. We're going to talk about everything that is going on with the LA Galaxy right now, including Joseph Paintsil. Is he back after a 2-goal performance? We'll get you ready as the Galaxy get ready for DC United coming up this weekend. To help me do all that, we're glad to have him back. It's Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, break up the Galaxy. They're way up to 12 points already.
They're shooting to the top. They've closed the gap.
They scored first. They scored last. They scored in between. Whenever they get a clean sheet, they win this season. That's kind of been the trend. 2 wins, 2 clean sheets.
2 clean sheets. That's the only thing you need to know. 2 clean sheets all year. 2 wins. So basically, as long as they don't allow a goal, they're good. They're good, right? Is that where we're going now? The Galaxy, the Galaxy are so bad that they can't afford to give up a goal at any point.
It was interesting in some of the post-game press conferences. People were talking about, look, this is a chance. We're on the right track now. They didn't really say salvage the season. They made it a little different from that. But it's like, now we're on a roll. We got some momentum. Calm down with the momentum stuff. They would have to go 12-0-1 the rest of the way, 12 wins and a draw, just to get to a winning record.
Yes.
So that's where they are now. If they did go 12-0-1, they're probably gonna make the playoffs. I don't think they're gonna go 12-0-1.
No, I don't think they're going to go 12-0-1. I don't think that, I don't think the playoffs are in there, but ultimately anything they do now has to hopefully benefit them in, the playoffs, the playoffs.
They cannot play in the playoffs. Remember those?
They can save money on those this year. I don't think they're going to get it. But no, having said that and looking at it, it's just anything that happens now is building for what you hope either is a run in Leagues Cup, which starts at the end of the July, right? So, starting to get hot now, and then how do they focus on Leagues Cup and how do they sort of, attack that? We're also sort of entering a period, Kevin, where we're sort of looking at where Ricky Puig is, right? And whether or not Ricky Puig is going to come back and when he comes back and how much playing time that happens whenever he comes back. So we're sort of looking at that as well. Greg Vanney mentioned after the game, after the 3-0 win over Vancouver, we'll have to look at Leagues Cup and how we approach that, right? Sort of, hey, I don't know yet because let's see sort of what happens in this. But I have to imagine they're, all out, going for wins and going for trophies in Leagues Cup because they don't have a lot. And quite honestly, maybe the Galaxy are suited well for Leagues Cup this year as a team that is really underperformed. Maybe, and again, let's not put the cart before the horse here, maybe has found some form here as of late. Last 5 games, 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws. That's not saying a lot because if you take in the whole scheme of the season, that's not great. But looking at the last 5 games, the Galaxy have picked it up a little bit. The Galaxy now have 8 points from home games too. Well,
and they're going to play Leagues Cup at home. That helps. So really 1 loss in the last 5 games. What you're saying, Leagues Cup is a tournament where you draw and you can go to penalty kicks, in the knockout rounds. Maybe get lucky there. The Galaxy played their best game of the season, which again against Vancouver, and it was a Vancouver team missing a lot of players to international duty and other things. So you can't get too excited. But you're right. The Galaxy have 2 more chances this season to win a trophy. I mean, we can agree that MLS is not going to happen, but they do have Leagues Cup. They have Campeones Cup, and they are kind of. If you call this rounding into form, again, beating an undermanned Vancouver team, this is the closest they've been to playing up to their potential this year. Leagues Cup is a possibility. Campeones Cup is 1 game,
right.
Just 1 game. If they play like they played in this game, they have a chance. And, the worst MLS season in the modern era was DC United in 2013. I think they won 3 or 4 games. They also won the U.S. Open Cup that year. That was a way to kind of salvage that season. The Galaxy have a way to salvage that season. I think we can agree that the MLS season is over and it's time to look ahead to 2026. But, winning Leagues Cup, that's a legitimate tournament. Winning Campeones Cup, maybe not so much, but it's still a trophy. They can win something this year if they play like they did against Vancouver. But again, the Vancouver game, I don't know. I'm having trouble like you are. What did this really mean, given Vancouver was missing so many players and really did look out of sorts?
Yeah, I also think we saw the same sort of shorthanded Vancouver team go into LAFC, score first, and hold off LAFC 1-0. So, maybe there's some overconfidence that comes into playing the 30th place team in Major League Soccer and watching the Galaxy's, results maybe more than some of their play. And I certainly think that, when you look at what the Galaxy accomplished in this game, that's great. I'm glad that, we can sit there and say that this is one of their best performances. I agree with Greg Vanney that, it was probably pretty complete. I'll agree with you that it's probably one of their best performances. There were still a lot of little things that I thought were not good in this game. I know Joseph Paintsil getting back on the score sheet and getting 2 goals and sort of, hey, hopefully coming alive. I still don't see a confident Joseph Paintsil out there. Even the goal he scored, I thought was a rather unconfident finish to it. The penalty kick is great. And maybe that builds something. I feel like even Vanney at the end of it was sort of like, hey, hopefully this gets Joseph Paintsil going. I don't think he was committal like, hey, Joseph's back, because quite honestly, if I look at this and look at who like the best players on the field were, it was easy for me. It was Marco Reus. I thought he was outstanding in the game. And then I look at guys like Gabriel Peck, who have just been steadily good, but just aren't getting sort of the bounces that you expect them to get. His pass leads to the Paintsil goal, that type of thing. So I'm sort of hesitant to say, hey, this was a great performance. I really thought Vancouver came and laid an egg more than anything. And, maybe that's not fair to the Galaxy that they finally had everything sort of break their way and they played a complete game and they got the shutout. Mitrovic made, a couple good saves that he needed to make. And the defense played really well. I thought the defense was outstanding. I thought Amiro Garces was
the defense
great.
was outstanding.
Yeah.
1 shot on goal, 6 shots for the whole game. Galaxy had twice as many, 1 shot on goal. And again, was it the best defensive effort of the season? Statistically, yes. But maybe it was just Vancouver didn't show up.
Yep. So anyway, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm still of the opinion that this Galaxy team has to prove to us that they're good, right? And that we can take these inputs that they're giving us, this 3-0 win over Vancouver, and certainly with where Vancouver lies in the standings, you want to make yourself feel good about it. I'm just not there yet. Again, here's the thing that I do like, back-to-back wins at home. That's important. They've taken 2 struggling teams, and I think, with RSL was a struggling team. Vancouver was not, but again, with all the missing players and all the stuff they were doing, I felt like they weren't really playing their game as of lately. They were sort of surviving in some of the games that they were trying to play. And Vancouver, we've sort of seen them swing wildly to be really good and really bad. This was one of their really bad games. I mean, I could show you the FOT mob of everything. And look, almost everybody in the Galaxy is in green. Outstanding performance, 7.3 overall average for the LA Galaxy. Probably their best one. I have to go back and look up the RSL one to see sort of where they were at. But Joseph Paintsil with a 9.1, overrated on that for me. And by the way, big Joseph Paintsil fan. I want him to get going, but the 2 goals really prop up some inconsistent, I think, non-confident moves that you see him during that game. Gabriel Peck with a 7.9. That seems pretty good to me. Marco Reus with an 8.1. Yeah, that makes sense to me. You go on the back line and Maya Yoshida and Amiro Garces at 7.6 and 7.5. Absolutely. Julian Aude on the left back, 7'4", makes sense. Miki Imane, I thought, had some mistakes, so I don't mind the 6'8", and the only one that sort of drops below the 7. But when you're looking at the performances that you got from these guys, Nascimento at 7'3", getting the early goal, right? So all of these things have sort of added up to being, you know, a good look for the LA Galaxy, right? And of course, we can always go back to the low-lying fruit, which is the early goal and scoring first. The LA Galaxy right now, it's only the 6th time all year that they've scored first, Kevin. Because they scored 3 goals in this game, they have now flipped it to where they're actually outscoring their opponent when they score first. Because before this, they were being outscored 8-9 or 9-8, depending on how you want to look at it. But they had 8 goals. Their opponents had 9. When they scored first, they were upside down. Now they've outscored opponents 12-9 whenever they score first. But again, they've done it 6 times. This is only the 2nd time that they've won a game from whenever they scored first. So 4 other times they have squandered whenever they have scored first. So again,
well, and you
positives.
mentioned Marco Royce. Marco Royce with 11 goal contributions in his last 11 games, dating back to April 27th. 4 goals and 7 assists. And the assists, I think, are what you want to see out of the position that he's playing right now. But Paintsil, you know, you talk about whether that was a good effort or a bad effort, and you know, how do you look at it? The Galaxy had 12 shots on goal. Paintsil had 5 of those, and they had 8. Well, excuse me, they had 12 shots. He had 5 of those. They had 8 shots on goal. That's a pretty good percentage. 2/3 of their shots were on target. Paintsil had 4 of those, and scored on 2, so he's 50%. That's producing an awful lot of offense. Maybe his confidence is coming back. Or maybe he's just decided anytime I get the ball, I'm just going to shoot and we're going to see what happens.
Right. I mean, yeah, but it's whenever he's shooting that ball, like, you know, whenever Paintsil is shooting that ball, whenever he's getting behind it, there's no power behind any of these shots. There's no conviction when he's taking it. You know, I think I'm in whenever I see, Vanny has sort of mentioned that he thinks that Paintsil's decelerating into some of these things. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a guy who's attacking. Look at the goal that they score, which is, you know, a great ball. By the way, when we talk about off the ball running and creating things and watching Marco Royce, and Vanny was talking about how Royce is just smarter than everybody else on the field, and he was talking about in terms of the Galaxy. He's just smarter than everybody else. He sees things that other people don't see. Royce is calling for the ball that Gabriel Peck is going to play into him that's eventually going to lead to the pass for Paintsil and the goal. He's calling for the ball before Nascimento makes the run because he knows Nascimento is going to make the run that's going to pull Royce open. Nasi makes a middle to near post run, so out towards the corner flag. He drags his defender. As soon as he starts moving his defender, Peck hits a ball into Royce. So basically, he's found Royce in a pocket right at the top of the box. Royce already knows before the ball even gets to him because he peeks over his shoulder that Paintsil's going to be open, and so he hits this little dinker of a ball that clears his defender and then puts Paintsil in. Paintsil's late arriving, and then he gets it, and it feels like, I don't know, everybody else, I watched this afterwards, but I was certainly watching, I watched the entire game and went through it. You look at it, and you say, he has to hit that first time, because you're like, if he sits on that too much, it's going to be, it's over, right? And he had already had 2 or 3 shots that were sort of blocked or didn't make it to the post from a similar position with his right foot. So he gets it, he takes it, he gathers it, he takes way too much time, in my opinion, and then he fires it. And if you knew where Paintsil has been shooting basically his entire season, you knew he was aiming far post with that, right? And so I believe the goalkeeper probably should have cheated a little more to that far post in order to try to take that away. So again, not taking anything away, it's not a clean route, it's not a clean finish. He makes it, but where's the confidence in Joseph Paintsil? Even after that, whenever he scored the penalty kick, did it look like he was like excited that he scored and that he was there? He was sort of pointing to the badge, he was doing all the things, but it feels like he's going through the motions. And that's where I'm sort of concerned about Joseph Paintsil. Unless you can get him emotionally involved, which happens sometimes, and I thought he played good defense in this game. Unless you can get him emotionally involved, it feels like he wants to take too much time, Kevin. Like he's thinking about it too much. Maybe that's not okay. You know, maybe
this is the game. Maybe this is the game that gives him that confidence and breaks him out of that. His mother was here too. Got to see him play in MLS. I think that was one of the first times, if not the first time, she'd seen him play in MLS. So all that I think helped a little bit. We talked last week about how he just was in his own head, and he looked completely lost. And yes, he did take a lot of shots to get 2 goals, but he did get 2 goals. And maybe, and with a scorer, when you find the back of the net, that tends to build your confidence a little bit. However you do it, you look at the game, the box score afterwards, and you have 2 goals. Maybe this is the thing that breaks him out of it. We'll see. We'll know on Saturday whether he's turned a corner or whether it's a cul-de-sac.
Right. Yeah, in a cul-de-sac. This is good. That is good, Kevin. I like that. No, it's just an interesting thing. I mean, the other part of this is just in the starting lineup, and just really it's Aude starting again. And I think, there's enough rumors around Julian Aude that it could be possible the LA Galaxy are showcasing him right now.
Yeah, look in the league.
We'll see if that sort of happens. But Julian Aude is an attractive trade piece right now. Now a lot of stuff is coming from outside of the league, which is a possibility certainly. And with his age and sort of his skill set, you could understand why Julian Aude would be wanted. I also think that if you look at it, his worth at a U22 player, which would transfer with any internal transfer. Remember, we're dealing with an internal transfer market as well, right? This is one of the, it opened earlier this year, but we didn't see a ton of movement. Well, now we're into whenever this eventually starts in July here. Now we're into a place where the internal transfer market could pay the Galaxy a significant amount of money should they move Julian Aude inside.
Yeah,
of the league.
The Galaxy get more cash if they move him in the league than they would if they move him out of the league, unless they get some, kind of Alphonso Davies money, which they're not going to get for Aude at this point. But yeah, I mean, he's an attractive guy in the league because of his age. The Galaxy can make a lot of money, and if they didn't send him, if they kept, as you said, if they kept it internally, they get to cash more of that money. They don't have to share nearly as much with the league. If it's international transfer, the Galaxy only get a portion of the proceeds.
Yeah. So we're sort of watching Julian Aude, but I'll tell you that in this case, especially, I think that with a sort of tamed down, watered down Vancouver Whitecaps side, starting Julian Aude on that left-hand side, giving yourself a little more offense, watching Aude be able to cut and play into small spaces, and then being able to pass out to Paintsil or combine with Fagundes to sort of do the things that you sort of want him to do. The other part of this, and I think that Hammer brought up with me whenever we were texting about the game, was just with Edwin Cerrillo playing with Marco Reus and Diego Fagundes, right? There's no Lucas Sanabria, who is, I think, similar to Cerrillo. And I think Hammer would make the idea that there's redundancy in that, right? And so with the redundancy in that, it's something that you could look at and say, hey, this is redundant. These guys sort of play the same position. There isn't as much there. So if you can get Cerrillo playing with a Diego Fagundes who has to play a little more box to box, but also is an offensive threat. If you look at Marco Reus, who now has, 11 goal contributions in his last 11 matches, a guy who is clearly the LA Galaxy's best player, and we've already sort of talked about him. But if you can get Julian Aude playing with Fagundes, playing with Paintsil, playing with Marco Reus, you're going to get more offense. He may hurt you a little on the defensive side, but I think they're showcasing that right now he can sort of play two ways on that backside, and maybe Julian Aude is a guy who can come out.
And if the Galaxy, I think you're going to see him play more than he has already, because I do think between now and the end of the month, and there's 4 games coming up, that they are going to use him, as you said, to sort of showcase him and let everyone know, hey, this guy could be available. Are you interested?
Yeah, it is. It's one of those that here. And here's the thing, Jaime, by the way, says, "Is there not a market for Nelson? He's a domestic player, which I'm sure many teams would like." Yes, but whenever you consider that Julian Aude has a cap hit of $200,000 as a U22, you're getting a ton of value from Julian Aude at $200,000. So what is that? What does that mean internally? Does Julian Aude, which the Galaxy I think brought in for under $5 million, if somebody offers them $4.5 million, all of a sudden the LA Galaxy have money to spend? And if there's money to spend, then all of a sudden the Galaxy have freed up space. I am of two minds of this, which is Julian Aude feels like a guy who you can build for the future and that should be a big part of this team next year. But if you think that John Nelson gives you the better defensive stance, and as a defender, that is sort of your first thing. If you feel like John Nelson is a guy who is serviceable there, then you could make some money on Julian Aude. And if you could make some money, then that might free you up to make some moves right now. And I think Galaxy fans would like to see some moves.
Yeah, I mean, there are two different profiles, Aude and Nelson. Nelson's more of a stay-at-home defender. He's gotten a little bit more involved offensively lately, certainly this season, than as opposed to last season. But Aude is much more of sort of a dynamic player, pushes forward a lot. He does sometimes leave himself open on the defensive end, but he is a guy that I think is going to, because of his age especially, but also because of his dynamism, I think he is going to attract some suitors. And you're right, when you look at the Galaxy, they have their three DPs tied up for several seasons. Royce is coming back for another season. He's got some money tied up in him. There's not a lot of wiggle room. If you want to create a roster spot, which would be a U22 spot, and you want some money to actually, they're fifth in the league in spending at $22 million already. If you want to open a roster spot, open a U22 initiative spot, and make a little bit of money, Aude is your only guy. That's it. Right. Nelson's not going to do that.
Yeah, 100%, and that's why one of the things that you're sort of seeing. But on
the other hand, let me just say that
yes.
if they move out, a lot of times when you move a guy like that, somebody that other teams want, it's a good player, right?
Right.
Presumably, it's someone who's a big part of your team, and Aude is a big part of the Galaxy team. But if you move Aude and then Nelson steps in and starts, I don't think there's a huge drop off. I don't think you probably play a little bit different way, but it's not like, oh my God, we're going to have to make sure everyone's aware of where Nelson is and protect him because he's not as good as Aude. No, Nelson's a really good player. And so if they move Aude, I don't think they lose a whole lot. Maybe offensively they lose a whole lot, but it's not like they've created a hole to move Aude.
Again, yeah, I think you're right. They haven't. And again, I think that, John Nelson is a guy who helped them win an MLS Cup. So I don't think you can knock that. It's just interesting to me that I think that the Galaxy really do have an asset in Julian Aude. And I think that if you could afford to hold on to him, which at this point in this season, do you need to make the money? That's sort of the tipping point for me. Do you have to make money off Julian Aude now? He is a piece, just like moving a goalkeeper or something like that you could move because you do have redundancy. You do have a backup. You do have a piece there. And so it's one of the few places I think the Galaxy really do have sort of, at least an argument about depth on the back line, right? You're not going to do that on the right-hand side. Cuevas is certainly playing more of a wing-back role whenever he comes in, but he can play on that right-hand side if you need him to with Mickey Amane, but the fact that he can play the wing-back role, that's different. Aude could technically play a wing-back role, but I think the way the Galaxy are playing right now, he's not going to be in charge of or getting above either Diego Fagundes or, Marco Royce or Joseph Paintsil, right? So you're sort of looking at that. Maybe that makes sense. I'll just say that, from certainly the all indications and with the rumors being, circulating, it seems like the LA Galaxy want and are possibly showcasing Julian Aude to possibly make a move. And if that's the case, they could.
This is a good time to do that if they want to do it internally, because we're more than halfway into the season. Teams are starting to look at the standings and say, hey, do we have a legitimate shot this year? Should we make a run at this? Should we make a move like the Galaxy did last year with Marco Royce? It was clear they were throwing the dice in. They were all in. They were, chips into the middle of the table. Let's go. There's teams in MLS that are trying to decide if they're in that position this year.
Yeah.
And maybe some of them need someone who fits Julian Aude could fit the hole that they're trying to fill. And they're desperate to get it done. This might be a better time to do that than, in the off season, because the Galaxy clearly are already starting to think about 2026.
I'm with Gary though. Gary in the chat room says, I really want to see more of Aude. And that's where I am. I want to see more of Aude. I've liked the last two games that he's played. I thought the Galaxy have played well. I thought he's played well. I don't think the defense has suffered. Again, we just talked about, maybe you lose something on defense with Julian Aude. Shutout in the game with him starting at left back. So, whether or not that's the same if Vancouver has all their pieces together, I would doubt it probably wasn't. But having said that, the Galaxy went out and they got something. Mr. Provino reminds us just 17 days until the MLS secondary transfer window opens. That starts on July 24th and it goes to August 21st. And then, of course, your roster freeze date is on September 12th. Thanks, Matt, for helping point that out. I had it down in my notes, but it's easier to read it off the chat room than it is out in my notes.
So who else is attractive? And we're talking about now in the league,
Yeah.
Would a team that needs a striker like the Galaxy when they went and got Billy Sharp and I'm not comparing any of these guys to Billy Sharp, but my point being that the Galaxy needed somebody to fill a position and they got a short-term guy. Would Christian Ramirez be that for another team? Would there be, the Galaxy do have 3 goalkeepers, so we could probably assume that one of those will be gone by the end of August. Other than the goalkeeper, maybe Aude, is there somebody else on the Galaxy roster that they could move. Cuevas. I don't know. Is there somebody else that could move?
Like you get into Cuevas, and again, I'm sort of in the whole. Why would you want to give up on Mauricio Cuevas? He's absolutely could be a piece for somebody. I will fall into this. There is a rule, Kevin, is you don't get to give up something you don't want to give up in order to get something that you want, right? So there has to be pain on both sides usually in order for this to happen. That being said, with the internal transfer market, we're finally in a position to where it could just be cash, right? So the Galaxy could just give up Julian Aude. The Galaxy could just give up Mauricio Cuevas, and all that would come back would be cash. But I think Cuevas still has a lot to give this LA Galaxy team. So I would be surprised if he was on there. But that being said, he's definitely somebody I think that people would keep an eye on. You look at just in the starting lineup, and we can sort of go through some of these, but Joseph Paintsil I don't think is going anywhere, but if for some reason he wanted to go back to Europe and do something like that, you could probably work a deal there that would make that happen. Not saying it would. Nascimento is on loan. You're still renting him to figure out whether or not you want him. Gabriel Peck hasn't had a great season. I'm sure you could work something out, but it's not going to be to the benefit of the Galaxy to sell him now. You keep. Diego Fagundes with a high salary is a guy who's probably not going anywhere, right? So perhaps if the Galaxy found somebody who's a contender, who's looking for a veteran who can still absolutely play, maybe Diego Fagundes could be a piece they move. Marco Royce isn't going anywhere. Edwin Cerrillo is the core of the young LA Galaxy there. He's not going anywhere, in my opinion. Although you're talking about somebody who has value, Edwin Cerrillo has value inside of the league. Julian Aude, we've talked about. Amiro Garces isn't going anywhere for the LA Galaxy. That's still a project for them, and I don't know that anybody would really take a gamble on him as much as the Galaxy have right now. And it seems to be, at least in this game, working. Maya Yoshida, no, just age is going to keep that from happening. Miki Amane, probably not. Just because of salary-wise. However, Miki Amane is still, I think, a valuable commodity inside of Major League Soccer. The international slot makes him more difficult to move, just like any international here does. And then Mitrovic. Mitrovic is a piece you could move inside of the league if you wanted to. I imagine the LA Galaxy have been playing him because they want to recoup their transfer fee and all the money they sort of invested in him. But Mitrovic is somebody, JT Marcinkowski, John McCarthy, any three of those LA Galaxy goalkeepers could move.
Well, the goalkeepers are an interesting thing to talk about, because I think it's totally flipped. And in my mind, it's totally flipped in the last 2 to 3 weeks, because I would have thought John McCarthy was the guy you wanted to keep. He was you're going to be your starter going forward. And JT would be the guy that you want to trade, but then maybe Mikovic, because he seemed unhappy. He seemed sort of like that, kind of unbroken stallion that if he got in the right place, he'd be a great player, but he just wasn't going to be that with the Galaxy. My mind's totally flipped now. I think Mitrovic is the Galaxy goalkeeper of the future, near future at least, and that John McCarthy might be a guy who other teams will look at and say, hey, maybe a Seattle now, with the unfortunate incident with Stephen Fry, maybe a team is saying, like, look, we need a solid character guy. We need a solid locker room guy who can step in and play at a moment's notice, or will sit on the bench and cheer for his teammates and won't be unhappy about that. That's the kind of goalkeeper we wanted. That's what he was at LAFC, and look what happened. In stoppage time of the championship game, he comes off the bench and wins MVP. And, that kind of reputation is going to follow him, and teams looking for some solid character backup guys. Teams maybe not looking for a starting goalkeeper, but a backup guy who can come off the bench and play. McCarthy fits that. Well, so does JT a little bit, but I think McCarthy, maybe with his experience at LAFC, is even better. So I see them keeping Mikovic, because I think he's played himself in that starting role. And, he's got 2 clean sheets in the last 4 games, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it really is. I agree with you. It sort of has, flexed a little bit for all this. So, I can look at the LA Galaxy and what they've done in this game, and I can look at what the LA Galaxy could possibly be as you go forward. But I think the Galaxy sort of have to figure out how they make themselves, one, is keep this quote unquote momentum going that they have right now. In the last 5 games, I think there has been some in that. Some momentum built in that. The fact that they have 2 home games that they've won, back to back is momentum enough for me to sort of have that as well. To go into the schedule and look at the Galaxy hosting DC United next. That's a chance for a win. DC United well down on the standings, and hopefully the LA Galaxy are rising when DC United is still falling. You have the LA Galaxy hosting Austin, which I think is, again, another chance at some wins for the LA Galaxy. 3 home games in a row, first time it's happened all season, only the second time the Galaxy have even had back-to-back home games. So they'll have that, and then it's El Tráfico on July 19th, so that's still sleeping in your own bed going up to the game, so not too far, and then away to Houston on July 25th, the All-Star game in between, which the Galaxy don't have to worry about anybody going to, and then it's the start of Leagues Cup. So yes, it's a busy July, but it feels like the Galaxy can at least build some momentum. And, look to see what the measuring tape says just before, the transfer window opens on July 24th, when you have LAFC and the LA Galaxy and El Tráfico at BMO. That's going to be sort of a good delineation, I think, Kevin, for where the LA Galaxy could be at that point.
And when you look at those 4 games, as you said, except for the Houston game, they're going to be in sleeping in their own beds for the first 3 of those games. LAFC is the only team they're going to play for the rest of the month that has a winning record.
Right.
Not that the Galaxy record is going to impress anybody. It's not. Right. But you have a better chance of winning a game against a team that has a losing record than you do against a team that is unbeaten. So as you said, it's a chance for a little bit of momentum at home against teams that aren't having good seasons. They go on the road to Houston. Houston's in a playoff spot right now, but does not have a winning record either. Right. And then it's a cliche, but it's true. You throw the records out when they go play LAFC because it's El Tráfico.
Yeah, it is El Tráfico, and it is a big deal for his performance on the night. 2 goals for Joseph Paintsil. Playing, I think really well in terms of everything that he sort of performed with. And looking at his goals again. I appreciate the finishing. I appreciate the fact that they found the back of the net this time. But for his performance, LA Galaxy's Joseph Paintsil has been named to Team of the Match Day on that. I think, by the way, undervalued Marco Royce in this game for this particular game. Should have possibly been on the bench or possibly been even named to the Team of the Match Day there. But Joseph Paintsil gets his first of the season. Only the LA Galaxy have only had 1 player of the match day in terms of the overall best player this week. It was Lionel Messi playing against Montreal. Should you get player of the match day whenever you're Lionel Messi and you're playing against somebody like Montreal? Will we find out whenever the Galaxy have to go to Miami and whether or not Lionel Messi becomes the player of the match day on that one as well?
Well, do you think anyone even bothers to tell him
that he won player of the match day? Does he get a trophy or something? Does he have to does he just put it under his car seat in the car? Does he just throw it in the back seat and it's on the ground?
They had a player of the match for the Club World Cup for each game, and they gave him a little trophy. I think it was Michelob sponsored it, and my God, the first time you get that trophy, I think you really try hard never to be the player of the match day again. It was the ugliest trophy I've ever seen. You do not want to get on a plane with taking a couple of those back to Paris with you. Those were horrible.
They're really that bad, huh?
They were terrible.
Just not where you want them. But no, watching the again, just with Miami coming up, that's another game that I've sort of highlighted. And if we go into the schedule into August, you can see on August 16th, after the LA Galaxy are done with Leagues Cup, after the LA Galaxy hosts Seattle, they'll be off to Miami to play a 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast in Miami against Inter Miami and Lionel Messi and friends. And what does that look like? How does that sort of look? And by the way, depending on how Leagues Cup goes, I think they could still be playing in Leagues Cup if those games are still going on?
Yeah, that game might be moved. That game might be moved.
Just both for if Miami's still in Leagues Cup or if the LA Galaxy are in Leagues Cup. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to sort of watch there. But that was sort of the news on that. We can go down, and we've already talked about it. The LA Galaxy, for only the second time this year, get a shutout. We can sort of look at that and see the 2 on. They're still getting outscored by 20-something goals, right? 22-42. Not exactly a great goal differential whenever we look at that. Looking at the designated player minutes, we're slowly inching up. And again, we realize that Ricky Puig still has 0 minutes, and that's sort of hauling down this average, but 47.3% of the total available minutes the designated players have played. So compare that to 82.5, so a little more than half now for the LA Galaxy of what they had last year. So slowly, ever so slowly, Kevin, inching up. The funny one I had here was the LA Galaxy are almost at a 10% winning percentage. With 2 wins now, they're almost have won 10% of their games. Not quite, just 9.5%. But again, they won 55.9% of their games last year. So seeing that drop off and everything that's sort of going there. the LA Galaxy, a better home team, 8 points at home, 4 points on the road for 12 points total. That's the LA Galaxy this year. And you can see that, it was something that I was hinting at, and I guess I was sort of hoping it was going to be true, Kevin, but you should win more of your home games. And being the Galaxy had played 4 more road games than home games, you sort of expected that they were, a little upside down. Well, if they start winning these games, which again is a big if for this team, you can see that their home record will do a lot to sort of buoy them towards climbing ever so slowly out of the basement. I did bring this up, and I wanted to share it with everybody. The LA Galaxy at 12 points right now, Montreal at 14 points, St. Louis at 15 points. Toronto at 17, Atlanta at 18, DC United 19. That is the race for the wooden spoon right now.
Those Montreal and St. Louis, they can hear those Galaxy footsteps. I guarantee it.
They are right there.
Coming.
They're right
coming.
there behind them. Right there behind them, Kevin. So looking at it, 12 points for the LA Galaxy, just 2 points south of Montreal, just 3 points south of St. Louis, really only 5 points south of Toronto. And you said, yeah, but even if the Galaxy win games, they have to hope those other teams lose games. And I said, the good thing about the bad teams is that they do tend to lose more games than the other teams. So there is a chance the Galaxy could climb out of that basement in the Western Conference and in the league.
You know who we haven't talked about yet is Nascimento. And he probably played one of his better, if not his best game. And he talked afterwards. We haven't talked to him very much this year.
Right.
But they did have a Portuguese translator, and we were able to talk to him a little bit after the game. And he talked about how he had a very difficult adjustment. And Greg Vanny talked about that too, the adjustment to a new country, to new food, new time zones, all that kind of stuff. But Nascimento talked afterwards about the game. He said the game here is very controlled and it's very physical, and I had to adapt myself to it. Day by day, I've been getting used to it. It's taken him this long to get used to that, which I don't fault him for that. I don't know that it's that unusual, but he did say that the adjustment period has been much worse than he thought it would be, and now he feels comfortable. So maybe the last half of the season we'll see a lot more from him.
Yeah, I'm still high on Nascimento. I think the Hammer has differing views in terms of what needs to happen, for Nascimento and what he wants to see from him, and just the expectation, Kevin, that he can score, from Nascimento, that he can create. I do like his hold-up play. I like whenever he drops stack deep. I like whenever he's able to get in behind and cause some problems, scoring the first goal and getting in the second minute. I mean, the roadmap to victory for the LA Galaxy is paved with crosses to Nascimento, as far as I'm concerned. I think I was critical over the last couple of weeks of the Galaxy not getting crosses in and not using Nascimento the same way that they used Dejan Jovalic. And, you see it in the opening that you're starting to get some of those crosses. And that needs to happen more of, especially from Peck, especially from Paintsil. But finding Nascimento in dangerous spots where he can poke his shoulder and find some separation and get his head in to score goals. Why not? He has the body for it. If you want to see real development from him, and again, it sort of depends on whether his loan lasts past just this year, right? And he's starting to show signs of, hey, maybe this could be a guy who would be, quote unquote, the next Dejan Jovalic, right? A young player that you can sort of develop around and that you can teach to sort of be that goal scorer. For me, Nascimento's slowly sort of showing the hints of that, and then the Galaxy will have to make a decision about what they want to do. But for me, he needs to be, if he's going to develop, and he's a young kid, if he's going to develop, you want to see him hit the weight room, right? Just get a little more physical and stuff like that, because he's already a physical player. You don't want to change a ton about him, but you want him to be stronger on the ball. And I think that he could really start bossing around some offenses.
Well, another thing he said, too, is that when he got here, in addition to the trouble adjusting to the style of play in the league, again, much more physical. And you mentioned, he needs to beef up a little bit. He didn't have to when he was playing, down in South America. But he also said the team was set up when he got here. And he had to adjust to them as opposed to them setting the team up to play his way. Peck, Gabriel Peck, when he came in last year, struggled a little bit at the beginning. And then when Paintsil got hurt, they moved Peck to another side and pushed him out much further out than he had been, and had him, it's cut into the box. In a sense, they kind of did design the offense a little bit about around him while Paintsil was injured. That didn't happen with Nascimento. He had to find his place in what was already a structure of the way the Galaxy were playing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, a little more disappointment, I think, for the LA Galaxy in the stands as well, Kevin, because only 19,557 people there for a July 4th game, which is usually one of their sellout games, right?
Well, attendance is down about over 17% this season. And granted, yes, last season had the Rose Bowl game, which skewed everything, but still, under 20,000 on the 4th of July game, the annual fireworks show, what, 30 consecutive years now?
Yeah, 29 because of COVID. I'm still upset they didn't have Cosmo with a sparkler during COVID, but hey, that was just me. That was just a suggestion for me. But no, you're seeing that. I think some of that certainly is due to the fact the LA Galaxy have sucked. This was their second win all year.
Well, and the supporters are rightly disappointed with the Galaxy, refusal to issue any kind of a statement
100%
about the ice raids. They walked out. They put a TIFO up, which was taken down by security. Fans walked out. They had planned to walk out at the 12th minute anyways, because of the Galaxy's lack of support, to the community in the midst of the ice raids. I did talk to someone at the league office a couple of weeks ago, and the person I spoke to refused to go on the record, refused to allow me to use his name, but just said that the league's policy is fans cannot unfurl banners that attack a government agency, like no ice or abolish ice would be prohibited by the league. I don't know that this TIFO necessarily fit that, but that was the league statement.
As far as I understand, the large TIFOs that were put out were all approved by the league. So everything you saw, both from LA Riot Squad. So one is the Victoria block on that side, Angel City Brigade and the associated other supporters groups there, putting out "Fight Ignorance, Not Immigrants" was the one. From my understanding, that's the approved one. All right.
Well, and that's sort of what I got from the league. Now, the Austin ran into a problem earlier this season when they had an abolish ice thing, and that ran afoul of the league's policy. Yeah, again, my understanding would be this TIFO would be legal under the league's rules. But where I was going with this is the spokesman from the league told me that the Galaxy had sort of suggested that they were told, or we had been led to believe through back channels or whatever you want to call it. It's all smoke and mirrors right now. Is that the league was the one who's telling the Galaxy don't issue a statement, and we've seen no one in the league that I know of other than LAFC issue any kind of a statement. San Diego did not, Austin did not, Houston did not, Dallas did not.
Chicago
teams
did
that have been affected by this. Mm-hmm. Chicago, NWSL teams, give them credit. Chicago did. Angel City immediately did. They deserve a lot of credit. My point was going to be the league told me, look, we never told the teams not to do that. We told them there are rules on TIFOs, there are rules on banners, but we never said don't issue that teams are not allowed to issue a statement. Teams can issue a statement about anything they want, and we encourage them to participate in the community. So the league is giving the Galaxy clearance if they want to issue any kind of a statement about these raids. It's a little bit late now. They've already lost the fans, and it's already been 7 weeks into this thing. But again, it goes back to what we talked about last week. This just reminds me a lot of 2023 and the fact that the supporters groups are unhappy. The supporters groups are letting management know they're unhappy, and the team is underperforming on the field when it should be a much better team than it is.
Yeah, it is. By the way, LA Riot Squad, we like our whiskey neat and our land and people free. Their TIFO, and then Alex Ruiz had this one put up, but there was a small sign that got unfurled in that Victoria Block area that says AEG loves immigrant dollars but not immigrants. So those were sort of the protest signs that we got to see there. And I think absolutely, the general temperature of what's going in Los Angeles right now kept people away from coming to this game, whether that was in protest of the LA Galaxy, not making a statement, or whether that was just in general fear. We talked about it on Thursday night on Wednesday night, whenever Greg Vanney answered a question that Rob Jalen put out, which was, what Rob basically said, what are the LA Galaxy doing to make sure that people can be safe, right? And ultimately is that, it was sort of, and I think in fairness to Greg Vanney, it was a question that I would have answered maybe somewhat similarly, is that, if you don't feel safe, then you can't then don't put your family in these situations. You need to make sure your family's safe. This is a game. These are games, and everything that. So I think that does affect something. Also pointed out in the chat room, Mr. Provino, other LA sports teams, have they issued statements, and where are they at? Outside of, the Dodgers said that they were going to make a statement, and ICE showed up in their parking lot the next day and that type of thing. I think that's sort of scared a bunch of people from doing that.
Well, let me pick up on that one, because I have a take on that, believe it or not. Soccer is different, and I learned this coming through soccer, kicking and screaming and not wanting to have anything to do with it, coming from a baseball background. And I came to soccer, and it was like the supporters are the lifeblood of soccer. Yes, you can have a game and you can pay the players and all that, but without the supporters, without the tifos, without the noise, without the drums, it's a totally different game. As fans who were there on Friday found out, the supporters are the life and blood of soccer, and not just in MLS but around the world. It's a totally unique atmosphere, and so the teams need to be. They need to back the supporters. They need to be there with the supporters. The supporters are the team in a lot of ways. And I applaud Angel City and I applaud LAFC for what they've done. I applaud the Chicago NWSL franchise. I think the rest of the league needs to pay attention to this because, again, the supporters are the team. So you look at the other teams. Okay, should they have said something? Absolutely. And remember, everybody was there for the wildfires, right? Everyone was right. And I'm not being critical. They should be there. Everybody was there for the wildfires. And you can say, oh, well, the Kings and the Ducks and the Rams and the Chargers, to a sense, they were all in season. They're not in season now, so maybe they get a little bit of a pass. The Angels weren't in season when the wildfires happened, and look what happens when a guy hits a home run this year. He puts on a firefighter's helmet. So, again, you can give some of those teams a pass because they're not playing right now. I don't think they deserve a pass. I think that they're still taking money out of this community, and this community is hurting right now. The Angels didn't say anything, and I didn't expect them to say anything. And, they're poorer for that. The Dodgers, not only did they go to the White House, but this was before the raid. So, again, maybe they get a pass on that. But they waited 6 weeks, and then they put out a statement and offered $1 million to immigrants' rights organizations. And what happens? They get sued by Stephen Miller's group over DEI stuff. So it's a toxic environment, but it's one of those where you need to stand up. What do you stand for? Because this administration is going to move on. Stephen Miller is going to move on. ICE eventually is going to move on after they destroyed countless families. The teams are going to stay here. And what kind of relationship are they going to have with the fans? It might not matter with the Dodgers, who draw 50,000 a night. We've already seen the Galaxy attendance drop. And I've got to believe part of it is what's going on in the community, whether it's fear or whether it's just lack of support because the Galaxy have proven spineless on this.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think it's the fear. I think it's what, people feel is the lack of support. I also think it's the team really being crappy too. So, I mean, those aren't things those are all mixture of things that can point to, how the LA Galaxy fill the stadium. There was a flash sale before, I believe, the July 4th game on Thursday that was sort of like, hey, we got tickets left. Come on down. We'll see how the whole deal. That's just not something that we have seen in years past. The Galaxy have to try to fill the stadium any way they can. I understand the flash sale and all those things to do. So ultimately, one of the things that will fix some of this, and only some of it, because not much of it, is to win games. But again, to embrace the community that's around you is always an important part of being a sports team. And maybe you're right. Maybe in soccer, and especially with the LA Galaxy, maybe it's more special. And so we'll have to see the ramifications of that. As the LA Galaxy go, though, and in terms of on-the-field stuff, things, for the first time feel a little bit better, right? Just on the field. We're not talking off the field. Feel a little bit better. Things feel like there's a little bit more positivity in this. But, Kevin, looking at the schedule coming up, and, I know we've sort of talked about it a little bit, but, I mean, realistically, are the Galaxy going to find more wins in this season? Was this an aberration? How do you peg the Vancouver game? Of an aberration, a bad Vancouver team that, in terms of they didn't have their players, they came in overconfident, they had traveled back and forth twice to come down to LA? Is it just the LA Galaxy getting some home games? Is it the roulette wheel? It finally landed on red, right?
I think we'll know in the Austin game because I think you're right, and we both said it. The Vancouver game, Vancouver's a very good team, but they didn't have their best players, and it was a Friday game, and there was a lot of excuses you can use if you're Vancouver. I don't think the DC United game. DC United is a terrible team, and they're traveling across the country. The Galaxy could mop the floor with them, and then would you say, oh well, this is a great team? No. I think maybe the Austin game followed by the LAFC game. We'll know a little bit more there. You said, can the Galaxy win more than they've been winning? Well, they can't win any less than they've been winning. So, right. Again, they have to go 12-0-1 to make the playoffs. They're not going to do that. Do they win 6, 7, 8 more games? Do they have a respectable finish? I mean, if the lowest amount of wins the Galaxy have had in a full season, and I've done this, I think, 3 times now, is 8.
Okay.
They're 6 away from that. They win half of their games. They get there. That would be more than a respectable finish, given where they were. If they can get to 8 and make this not be the worst season in team history, I think that would probably be something worth celebrating. It's going to be tough. They've won two out of 21, and we're going to say they're going to win half their games going forward. I don't know. But if they're certainly good enough, I mean, when you look at this team and you look at the way Marco Royce is playing, and you look at the talent that's available, and you look at if Joseph Paintsil has finally figured some things out and got his confidence back, and then Peck will feed off of that, and Nascimento now is comfortable in the league, you could see this team doing some damage.
Damage in quotation marks. All right. Damage in quotation marks. Cause again, the LA Galaxy right now are 5 points below their worst ever start through 21 games, right? So that would be 2007 that had 17 points. The LA Galaxy have 12 points. You can go back to 2023 or 2022 or really even 2017. I should have said 2007 instead of 2017. I don't know if I did or not, but 2007 they had 17 points. 2017 they had 23 points. 2020 22 points. 2023 22 points. The LA Galaxy would need to almost double their points total right now, 10 more points to be up and even with the 2023 team, up and even with that 2020 team, up and one back from the 2017 team. And I'm at least in agreement in my head, and I almost don't care what anybody else thinks, that 2017 was the worst season the LA Galaxy ever played. That being said, if you look at 2020, which is a pretty humorous year in terms of how it goes, 2020 had 22 games in it. And that means that one more game and that 2020 mark will disappear off of this chart. Right. So you'll be done with that. And 2020 was a really bad year. And looking at the numbers, it proves out that it was a bad year, but it's not considered the LA Galaxy's worst year. That was more 2017 whenever we go there. Projections for the LA Galaxy in goals, Kevin. They climbed a little bit, 35.6. They have now crested above the 1 goal per game mark in terms of scoring. And they have receded ever so slightly from the, I think 72 was what we were predicting last week, to the 71.1.
A clean sheet will do that. A clean sheet will do that for you.
Yeah, so 68. They're now projected to give up 68 goals this year, which is at least in the neighborhood of 2023. Whenever you look at it, it's in the neighborhood of 2020, which was a projection year again because they only played 22 games. Is a far cry from, it would be 18 goals difference from 2024. That being said, the Galaxy are 34 goals less right now than they were in 2024. So again, for me, it's still been the offense. Yeah.
When you talk about the 8 wins, I mean, 2017 being the worst season, and I tend to agree with you, but 2023 was also an 8-win season. Then they had one back in the early aughts, which, back in the leather ball days, I think they had an 8-win season. But I do think 2017 was a horrible year, and they went to 2 coaches, and that was when Jonathan Dos Santos came in the middle of the year, and they just had some awful acquisitions. And but 2023 was another 8-win team, and that was the fan boycotts as well, and the whole front office turmoil. That may have been an uglier year overall, if not as ugly on the field.
Yeah, I was going to say off the field, certainly more ugly than many of the other years. 2017 was at least coming off of a Bruce Arena time in 2016, and there was a youth movement involved. Remember that? Remember how much fun that was? Yeah. The youth movement being involved. Jermaine Jones, I think, was part of that game. Yella Van Damme, I think, came into that team as well. It's, by the way, that 2017 team has more names on it than you think they do. But also that wasn't a good team, right? And so that's why Anolfo didn't make it through most of the year. And then Siggy Schmidt comes into that. Is that if I remember correctly?
The season, yeah, and Dave Bigham was the goalkeeper.
Yes, that's right. David Bigham was the goalkeeper. So just an interesting time for the LA Galaxy in that time. We can go to another chart which I thought was interesting. Well, one is I wanted to go to the goal differential, right? -20 right now. It actually tucks them under 2017, which was -22. I don't expect the Galaxy to stay at this -20. I just want to, again, put it in perspective some of the things that I look at whenever I'm looking at good team, bad team, where do they rank in terms of everything. So it's really interesting to me to look at 2017 and say -22, and then the LA Galaxy in 2025 right now are at -20, and you're like, they are right there up against them. Even -16 in 2023 is at least in the neighborhood of these other ones, right? 2020 -19. So we're talking about some of the worst years the LA Galaxy have had can be explained by the goal differential in this chart. You can look at it. The greater the goal differential chart, the worse it was, right? So just again, another interesting part of all this.
That tends to happen when you give up more goals than you score. You tend to lose more games. And by the way, that 2017 team, guess who the right back was? Ashley Cole.
Left back. Was he left back? Left back.
Yeah, it was outside back. He was on the team.
Yeah,
he was on the team.
Yeah, he was so much fun to watch.
And fun to talk to. Bright guy.
100%. One of the smartest guys. We go to the points per month and sort of the schedule thing. This is the first time all year the LA Galaxy have won the first game of the month. Just I don't
Undefeated in July.
Undefeated in July.
I'm telling you, break up the Galaxy. This is bad for the rest of the league.
3.0 right now in terms of the points per game
not
in July.
Drop the point.
Yeah, not drop the point. Got them all. Well, there is something here. And looking at the average, and again, it's not much to really pay attention to, but obviously February 1 game and it's a loss. It's zero points per game, right? But looking at March, 0.4. Looking at April, which only had 4 games in it, and they're at 0.25. But then you get into May, again, 1, 2, 3. There's 5 losses, 1 draw, 1 win in there, but your points per game goes up to 0.57. June it goes to 0.67. So is it slowly rising? Will it suddenly shoot through? Is it like Willy Wonka's elevator there? Will it shoot through the top and carry you on? Right now it says yes. The LA Galaxy are absolutely in the penthouse as it comes through with 3.0 points per game. Can they keep that through the rest of July though?
This is an amazing. Go back to that chart because it's an amazing chart. When you look at that, Galaxy have only lost one of their last 5 games. Is that right?
Yes, it is because they've won 2 and they've lost and they've drawn 2 and there's 1 loss. The last 5. That's how
what
I'm telling
you, man. Yeah. The Leagues Cup. Well, look out, Mexico.
Oh,
this Galaxy team is on fire.
We had somebody was commenting on one of our older videos and after the win, and they're like they won another game. Look out! And I wrote back, don't call it a comeback. It's like the Galaxy are right on the precipice of doing something. But I'm interested to see how they take this whole thing in. I think there are going to be some changes in the summertime. I think that after the transfer window opens, for some reason, I think Galaxy fans expect there to be movement. I think, quite honestly, the Galaxy front office probably expects there to be movement, but in order for there to be movement, it has to go out first before it can come in. And so how the Galaxy are trying to shape up and figure out what that is and how that works. Again, I mean, if you're looking at the prime target, we've talked about him already, but Julian Aude seems to be the guy who could be on the move for all of this. So again, I will say this as clearly as I can. Don't trust a lot of the stuff that's happening outside the league with Julian Aude. Whenever we start hearing rumors inside the league, I feel like that's going to be more realistic of everything that's going on.
Well, I wrote last week that the Galaxy and Will Kuntz really had no wiggle room. I mean, they're at their 5th highest payroll in the league. They've got all their DP spots and their U22s. It's all filled up. I didn't mean that they wouldn't make a move. My point was they had no room to make a move. So They got, as you said, they have to do something first. There's no room. They can't bring anybody in. There's no place to put them. There's no, they're full. And so they have to push somebody out before they can bring somebody in. They're full on spots. They're full on international spots. They're full on everything. They're full on salary. So something has to go out to create a hole to bring something in.
We will watch that as it goes and as things progress here for the LA Galaxy. I'm trying to think if there's any other charts that we absolutely need to look at. Somebody, Mr. Provino was saying, it was like 2012, which was, the best of the second half, right? The second half of the season was the best for the LA Galaxy. I'm trying to see if I can figure out which one of these. Yeah. So it's the orange line that's at the bottom, which was sort of 2012. It's the one that's closest to the LA Galaxy right now in terms of where they are, but this is just comparing MLS Cup years to the LA Galaxy this year, and the gap is gigantic in there. That's a lot of points in there, and the graph would have to get very steep for a very long time. But if you look at sort of that 2012 team, they started it at about, everybody likes to say that it was the best second half. It was, except it started at game 13. The Galaxy had 2 or 3 wins in a row. Game 13, they lost one in between, and then they kept sort of rising, and they kept sort of going. This year, the LA Galaxy's graph is very shallow, and it should be because they just haven't had any points. So 12 points now for the LA Galaxy. Again, just 2 points behind Montreal right now. 2 points behind Montreal. A win on Saturday against DC United, coupled with a Montreal loss, would move the LA Galaxy out of 30th position in that wooden spoon race. So not insurmountable. There is something to keeping your head off the floor, Kevin, right? Like, if you're going to get beat up in a boxing match, try not to go out, try not to get knocked out, right? Try to make them work as much as you can, try to do the whole thing. The Galaxy have to do that right now. They're bobbing and weaving and trying to dodge some of these. They just landed a good punch. They stumbled the guy back. He wasn't expecting it. It doesn't mean that he's not going to come back angrier. And the Galaxy are trying to keep their head off that mat.
I think I've just talked myself into believing the Galaxy might have a pretty good Leagues Cup.
You can. if you want to see that game plan and you play it out, do it this way, which is the Galaxy win their 3 home games, right? So they win DC United, they beat Austin. They go away to LAFC. Maybe they get their first road win. Maybe it's a draw, right? But you don't want to see them lose that game. I think then it puts them in Houston. You need to keep some momentum in Houston and sort of continue to fire that forward. And then you go into that TJ game playing against Tijuana and the Xolos, and you need to come out and have a statement game. You need to find a way to win that game, because then it puts you in against Cruz Azul, which is a game that's going to be way more difficult for you to win. Santos Laguna. There's some bigger and heavier hitters here in Liga MX. So the Galaxy have to carry momentum into that, and the only way to do that is to win these games at home. Even if they lose to LAFC, even if they lose to Houston, keeping the home winning streak is important because the Galaxy play those Leagues Cup games at Dignity Health Sports Park. Not saying it will be a home-friendly atmosphere, especially whenever you're playing against Liga MX. It's something that I think is important to LA. So again, I think the Galaxy and I think Greg Vanney is going to hedge his bets a little bit on Leagues Cup, which is saying it's really important for us to have a good showing. They're not going to sort of indicate that they really, really, really need to try to win that tournament. And I think that's what it's going to be. I think they're really going to try to win that tournament, which isn't great for me. Don't love it. Don't love the tournament. But whenever you're talking about the LA Galaxy and things that you can pull from a really crappy year in the league, that's something you could do. Getting to a final, winning a trophy, winning a Leagues Cup trophy would be monumental in terms of what the LA Galaxy are trying to do.
Doesn't Leagues Cup feel a little bit like U.S. Open Cup? And by that, I mean, certainly the quality of the opponent is different. But in U.S. Open Cup, it was always, let's play, our backups the first couple of games, and then if we get into a position where we can win, then we go for it. And I'm not saying they're going to play backups, but I think they go into group play kind of just seeing where they're at. And if they win a couple of games and look pretty good and get in that knockout round, then it's like, hey, we win 2 or 3 games, we got a shot. And then they start to double down and really start, maybe Ricky Poo shows up in that tournament at some point. I don't. It seems like he's further away than that, but it looks like I think Greg Vanney is going to go in and just kind of feel his way through the first couple of games, and then if he feels like they got a shot, then all of a sudden the training wheels come off and they really go for it.
Yeah, it's going to be again. Let's watch. I'm interested to see the timing for Pooch. I still think it's a little while out, but having said that, getting him back, getting him in, and using these games as sort of his rehab stint is important. And how well he plays, how comfortable he feels, sort of gives you a limited look at what you're going to see in 2026.
Well, and certainly I would expect him to be back for Campeones Cup. Isn't that like late September?
In September, yeah. And I'll look it up exactly whenever it is. But yeah, 100%. So that's what we have. The LA Galaxy 3-0 winners over Vancouver Whitecaps on July 4th. Good positive step in terms of the team's play on the field. We'll see if Joseph Paintsil can maintain that thing. Oh, one of the things I want to talk about, Joseph Paintsil mentioned, and I want to make sure that I get this right because I want to quote him correctly. And I had it pulled up and then I closed it because I was ready to close this out. But Joseph Paintsil talked about some of the abuse that he's getting, Kevin. And, just in terms of when you're a soccer player, I think you're expected that there's sort of the standard. One is stay off of socials as much as you can, man, because the place is toxic. Having said that, Joseph Paintsil has had to put up with a lot this year. I've certainly seen it in the chat rooms, and I've seen it in the Discords, and I've seen it in on Twitter and everything else that is going on. But he basically said whenever he was coming out that he has people calling him a monkey on social media. He says he has people who are threatening to kill his mom. And he said, that's just sort of the thing. There's always backlash not playing well, but it's something you just have to put up with. I disagree with that 100%. There should be no reason that Joseph Paintsil should have to put up with any racial slurs or any threats to his family. That is, it's a sad state of affairs. And as much as I can, I think, hopefully fairly criticize Joseph Paintsil on this, I would never in a million years expect him to have to put up with any of that stuff. And so it's a real indictment of sort of where I think the social media is and just where, the state of the world is right now, that's just sort of expected, that he thinks that just sort of is expected. But for that and being able to put up with that stuff and play, I honestly, I don't know how he does it, but he's a strong guy to be able to do it. Let's put it that way.
I'm trying to think of the example and I can't, but I thought Samuel Grandsir and or Kevin Cabral dealt with a little bit of that too. When
I
they
would
were
imagine
here.
they did. I would imagine they did. I don't remember. Maybe the chat room can remember 100% to do it. But yeah, I would imagine that was also the case. And but again, I think it sort of makes me angry that I'm not surprised that would also be the case. Right? It's just one of it's one of those things that shouldn't be one of those things.
Well, yeah, you told me last week when we were talking about social media, you said don't live on social media. It's not the real world.
It's not the real world, right? It is not the real
And
world.
I would hope that those people, whoever did that, first of all, I would hope that it was a bot and that there's no humans that would do that. But if they are human, I think you were the ones that said they're probably not Galaxy fans.
I would hope that they're not like actual part of this community, Galaxy fans, because I have more respect for people within this LA Galaxy community than that. So hopefully that is the thing. To end this off, crazy $5 super chat. Since it's SpongeBob night on Saturday, son Adam is asking, do you have a favorite theme night? Dodgers had a big One Piece theme night. Do you have any like favorite theme nights? You've been to a million of them, so I want to know.
You know, I'm so glad he brought up One Piece because I saw that on the calendar when I'm assigned to cover Dodger games. Here's my little schedule here, games I have to cover coming up. The first thing I do is look at the promotional calendar to see what bobbleheads I'm going to get. And I saw One Piece night, and I thought One Piece night had to do with swimsuits, and it's not. It's like a kind of a Pokemon knockoff kind of thing. And driving into the stadium 5 hours before the game, there was a line of people waiting to get in to get their One Piece stuff. I think they handed out a card and a hat.
What is One Piece? How do I know? I feel old. This is One Piece characters. Let me see.
It was a sellout. It was a massive crowd.
Man, I need to go. My son is big into Pokemon right now, and so I can understand sort of the attraction to some of these cartoons and things, and I'm just not attuned to them. My kid like knows all this stuff and would probably is always like, I need to get this card. By the way, both my kids are that way.
I love any bobblehead night, and if Kevin Acevedo was listening, he can do with what he wishes with that. But yeah, I love all bobblehead nights. Theme nights, I do like the Hello Kitty nights. Those are pretty cool. I do like the Bark in the Park nights when the dogs come, and I wish we could do another dog adoption thing that we did last year.
Right.
So those days are nice. And the cultural heritage nights are always kind of cool too. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about before. One reason supporters feel like they're not getting support from the team is the team has all these cultural heritage nights, and then you would think that they would follow through when the actual cultural heritage is being attacked.
Right.
But anyway, you're looking at obviously some super chats coming in.
No. I was just people are explaining to me what One Piece is. I had no idea, literally no clue. But the longest running manga. So it's not a game. You're talking about anime and
right.
Amazing. And by the way, like I have my 13-year-old is starting to get into some of that. I love the stories and the lessons and all that stuff. So I'm not against anime at all. I just literally had no idea. So no, this is cool. So One Piece. So that was a big deal, and it was sold out, and it was a whole big thing.
It was amazing, and the line outside the parking lot again, 5 hours for the game in the sun, people waiting to get. They're going to get their One Piece stuff. It's just like
right.
Everyone who comes in gets it, but they had to be there to be the first ones to get it.
Dude, Joe says it's basically a Japanese cartoon about wacky pirates. I'm in. If that's the elevator pitch, I'm in. It's about wacky pirates. I can handle that. My favorite, and I don't, obviously the ones at the LA Galaxy, the Angels usually have their Christmas in July one where like you can wear Hawaiian shirts, but they're Christmas Hawaiian shirts, right? Like it's sort of the cross between both Christmas and summer that you can sort of mix together.
But you can wear that shirt anytime you want it.
You can. I have a big Stitch, a Lilo and Stitch shirt that says Merry Stitchmas, and I wear that all the time. And my wife is like, I bought that for you for like one time, and you should have thrown it out. You're not allowed to wear it outside anymore. I'm like, okay, got it, 100%. Didn't know that was the rule, but I'm in now. So. No, it's really fun to sort of see some of the different ones. I don't know, like what are some of the I would say it's a touchy subject, but anytime the championship rings happen at Dignity Health Sports Park, that's a pretty big one to have. I'm afraid to even touch those things. I feel like they're sort of cursed black magic now.
Yeah, like you're not allowed to touch the Stanley Cup unless you win it.
100%.
But Hello Kitty nights are always great.
Wait a minute. Ernest says, I sold my Dodgers One Piece card for how much do you think Ernest sold his One Piece card? Because you're not looking at the chats. Nobody knows this. You don't pay any attention.
$400.
How did you know it was $400?
I was going to say 4,000. I thought that's too much, so I just kept the 4.
400. That was
what it was.
100%. Ernest, good job, buddy. That is awesome.
And so what I was going to go, I didn't want to diss Dodger fans, but I was going to say is I think those people that were waiting to get in first, what they wanted to do was get those cards,
right,
and then be the first to put them on eBay. And I know that from experience, because back when I covered the Marlins, and I know people hate when I bring this up, but back when I covered the Marlins and they sucked and they were horrible, people used to go to the bobblehead nights or the cool giveaways when they gave away something cool. People would actually, and I saw this with my own eyes because I took my son to games as a fan. They would go through the turnstile, get the goodie, and go out immediately, race to their car, drive home, and put it up on eBay immediately, whatever the thing was, so that they could be the first one to post it and sort of set the price. And then the attendance would be announced at 35,000. There'd be 800 people in there because everyone's at home selling their stuff on eBay. So it didn't surprise me that the One Piece things went, because clearly that there's a lot of demand for them, I suppose. A lot of interest.
It seems that way. 100%. Patrick, $10 super chat. This podcast will get a home playoff game in 2025. That's good. That's good to know that we're going to get a home playoff game. We've been staying, somewhat steady. I always feel like, we're just sort of muddling along here, one game at a time. How do you do over 1,200 podcasts? You do one at a time. That's how you do it. So we'll be back on Thursday night to get you ready for the DC United game coming up on Saturday. Busy time for the LA Galaxy, Kevin. Saturday, Wednesday, I think Saturday or Sunday after that. So just multiple games coming very quickly, and then rolls right into Leagues Cup, which will be condensed format this time. Galaxy couldn't end up playing league games and Leagues Cup games at the same time. Not literally at the same time, but within the same week.
What if they did like the Sounders and Cruises who were on the field at the same time? The Galaxy had to play both of them.
They had to play both of them at the same. That would be fun. Like, they had to tag out. Yeah. Like you had to tag out. That's how it would work. So very good. Well, we appreciate all the chatters tonight, hanging in there with us. Anything else, Kevin, you want to get to before we get out of here?
Yes, I do. I looked at the scores this weekend. Here's how hot the Galaxy is. Not only have they lost one of their last 5 games, but this weekend their 3-goal margin of victory was equal to the largest in MLS. Only Miami, with a 4-1 win, had a 3-goal victory. There's also the largest shutout margin of victory. Nashville, I believe, won 1-0. The Galaxy won 3-0.
Wow.
So largest shutout margin of victory.
Wow.
And matched the largest margin of victory throughout MLS. The Galaxy are on fire.
Stacking up the superlatives.
The rest of the league is on notice.
They're worried. That's it.
Sasha, break out the razor, buddy.
That's right.
You might need it.
Do the rest of the bottom 5 teams or do the top do the bottom 3 playoff teams have to forfeit the rest of their games in order for the Galaxy to make it up? Is that what?
Well, just let me say this: we're going to be eating without a spoon this winter.
It would be nice to see the LA Galaxy climb above the basement, because I don't think that they've absolutely deserved to be there, but whenever we're looking at the talent they have and the players they haven't deserved to be there. And if they can string this together and get their heads right and sort of put something together, not only does that help them now, it helps them in 2026. So trying to watch them sort of figure this out is all part of the fun here of watching
double digits in points already. It only took 21 games to get there, but we made it.
12 points for the LA Galaxy in 21 games. That's where we're at. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter, and God only knows why you would, at KBaxter11 on all of his socials, and then LATimes.com for all of his reporting. And he is the reason the Dodgers keep losing, because he keeps covering the Dodgers, correct?
Yep, 4-game losing streak, season high.
That's all you. All right. If you're looking for me on all the socials, this is at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. And of course, you can go to Spotify, Apple iTunes, any of the places you can find your podcasts, you can find Corner of the Galaxy. All right, that does it. The LA Galaxy will face off against DC United coming up on Saturday and Thursday night. We will get you ready for that game and get you all your LA Galaxy news. All right, for Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.